What's in store for you over the next couple months?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot of hard work trying to gain more and more awareness and support around the country. I think there's a lot of it out there. It just takes contacting people, raising awareness, educating people about who I am and what I've stood for or what I have been standing for, and trying to coordinate all that support into something meaningful and something that could possibly help me in my case in terms of what the message I'm trying to send out to the American people is that the responsibility of this war, of ending this illegal and immoral war, lies with the people of this country and holding our leaders accountable. But if they don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. And you're going to end up putting the soldiers in a horrible position, in a moral abyss in which they have to choose between what is the morally right thing to do and what is the possibly safer thing to do, not in terms of a physical danger, but in terms of ruining their career, going to prison, and their families having to suffer because of that. So it's going to be extremely busy, and I'm going to also have to ready myself for the legal case. Most likely I will have to testify, and the crux of my defense, or the mitigation of my sentence, is going to revolve around my state of mind and the things that I believe and the sincerity of those beliefs.
What do you think the United States should do about the Iraq quagmire?
I think the troops, I agree strongly with Congressman Murtha and Lieutenant General retired William Odom that the troops should be withdrawn immediately. I think that with the recently released national intelligence estimate that said that the mere presence of American occupation troops in Iraq is causing America to be less safe from terrorism. I mean, that should just be a glaring reason, an obvious reason to why we need to pull the troops out immediately. And I think that this whole idea of us trying to prevent a civil war or trying to spread democracy and freedom in Iraq is completely false. The Iraqis have been polled earlier this year, and an overwhelming majority, I believe almost 80% of the Iraqis, want American troops to leave the country immediately within 6 months and a year. One, because they believe that the presence of American soldiers or occupation troops are fueling the sectarian violence. And simply, a lot of them feel justified in attacking American troops. And I think just from that message alone sent by the Iraqi people, if we want to instill and spread democracy, we have to listen to what the people want. And the people want American troops, want coalition troops to leave their country immediately.
What do you expect from the Army as far as in this impending trial?
I certainly expect the Army to want to make an example out of what I have done, out of my stand and what I'm speaking against. Certainly they want to send the example, and I think it is very dangerous because the example or the message they're trying to send is that when you join the military, you do what you're told. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. You do what you are told, right or wrong. And that is a very dangerous message to send, because who wants to join the military if they're going to be forced to do whatever, regardless of what they believe in their own conscience? And I think that'll lead to a mass exodus of soldiers leaving the military because of that, and also it'll kind of prevent a lot of potential recruits from joining the military.
What will happen to those military bases?
I believe those military bases are going to come under heavy attack. And the reason for those bases are twofold. One is to set up a permanent presence in the Middle East in order to have that military presence to ensure national security interests, national economic interests for America. The second thing is that in a counterinsurgency doctrine, it is required that troops that occupy the country, foreign troops, live amongst the people in order to effectively combat insurgent warfare. And the thing is, the American commanders on the ground are slowly getting this concept, but they keep going back and forth to trying to fight this war the way they should be doing it, and the way they have been taught their whole lives in terms of modern warfare, or in terms of how would you say, I guess unlike a counterinsurgent or asymmetrical war. And what they're doing is they're pulling all the American troops back to these bases, and they are not being effective at fighting the insurgency because they don't have a bead on what the people believe and what the people think about the war and about their occupation.
Pablo Paredes stayed at our house about a month ago, and during his trial, his military judge found that the war in Iraq was illegal, as well as he came to the conclusion that the war in Afghanistan was illegal. What do you think are the possibilities that this court case will set a precedent for your trial?
I don't know. I don't think we have determined that as of yet. I think it really revolves around what our judge determines he will allow as evidence and what is admissible in his court.
Now the charges for you speaking of about Bush deceiving the country were dropped, right?
Right. Well, I was doubly charged. I was charged with the contempt against officials and conduct unbecoming on the same pieces of evidence. They dropped the contempt against officials charges because they were a lot more contentious and allowed a lot more for the defense to argue. Yes. And they dropped those charges, and certainly they felt that they could get away with the conduct unbecoming charges, and I think that still remains to be seen. We will certainly argue that those charges, even of themselves, are unconstitutional, in that they attack free speech rights and the vagueness of the articles themselves.
So what do you think their rationale is for subpoenaing the journalists that quoted you in papers stating that what you think about the commander-in-chief?
I think that's a whole other issue to think about or to consider. Certainly, I think the prosecution, or I've been told the prosecution needs those witnesses, those videographers and those journalists to authenticate the statements that they're alleging I made. Without them, they may not have much of a case. And of course, they may be certainly within their right, the prosecution or the government, to subpoena these reporters, but it brings up the issue of still, again, constitutional rights, freedom of the press, and that you're bringing in journalists and reporters, the government is, to testify against people who the government has allegedly made certain remarks or disparaging remarks against the government.
How are you holding up through all this? And off the record, how do the other soldiers on base feel about what's taking place around you?
Well, I think that just the effort of trying to get the message out has been very exhausting and difficult and very challenging at some points. But I think, I'll say on the record, there have been a multitude of soldiers of all ranks, even dependents, who have approached me on base and off base and given me their support and respect for what I'm doing.
As I followed your story and the development of your story, I saw that you had studied and had become aware by looking into the United Nations Charter and the other accords that this war was illegal. How did you come aware of this?
It's not very difficult to find. I think it just takes a little willingness to want to know the truth, and you can find it. It's definitely not difficult at all for anyone to find. Certainly you have to go through a multitude of information and filter out a lot, but the truth is out there.
So in the Geneva Accords, and clearly under the UN Charter, it's an illegal war. It was not mandated by the UN Charter, and the Geneva Accords say that there's no such thing as a preemptive war. Is this your conclusion?
Yes, definitely. And even more, I think, dangerous to our society and to our country is the fact that we have one branch of government that deliberately misled another branch of government in order to authorize war, in illegal war, for that matter. And I think in our country, we pride ourselves in having a separation of powers, checks and balances, and those things that prevent tyranny and authoritarianism. And when we have a breakdown of that, which we have seen over this war and many other different things, that can be very dangerous for our future.
Have you been able to have much of an opportunity to talk to returned veterans about how they're experiencing the change in opinion amongst the Iraqis to the U.S. occupation?
No, I haven't. There have been, as I said, several returned veterans who have given me their support for what I'm doing. I don't think it's probably the majority of the military, but there are many within the military itself who agree with my stand. And there's certainly a lot within the military who are opposed to this war for any number of reasons.
Man to man, are you worried about your future as far as this court-martial goes? Or are you, I mean, it seems to me you're willing to take their medicine. I, myself, I spoke up in Maui, and I was given death threats. People called up death threats. They hoped that I would be shot along with your father. And I felt that was, you know, just bizarre that people would be talking like this. How do you feel about what's potentially at stake here and what you're risking in your future?
Well, those things that you're talking about are just simply hatred and ignorance. And we see it all over the world in issues not even as important or significant as this. So we're always going to find that. But I think for myself, I'm not worried about my future. This is certainly an important and significant chapter in my life, and I'm going to carry it with me. And it's going to help me become a better person, and I think I can take solace in the fact that it's helping to change the world.
What kind of message can I give to the folks in Hawaii from you, and how can we help you?
I think basically, as I said, it's just to raise awareness among as many people as possible, to educate people on everything there is to know behind Iraq, and to ask people to take a stance one way or another, whether they agree or disagree. And if they agree that this war is wrong, that it's illegal and immoral, what are they willing to sacrifice in order to stop it?
Thank you, Ehren. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure.